You get up with us. We welcome you back to another hour of Get Up, coming to you live as always from the Seaport District at Pier 17. We are brought to you by Chase. I am Greeny, and we are busy with an interesting basketball game we'll get to momentarily, but we're getting up with a day we've been waiting 2 years to arrive. Finally, decision time for Dak and Dallas. Will they get a deal done? We've got the very latest. Plus, one of the biggest decisions will be in Green Bay. Could one of Rodgers' biggest weapons be on his way out the door? It's tag day, and we're all over it. And then there's one team that absolutely has to find a way to land Deshaun. We'll tell you which team and why as we get up with you starting right now on a day that has been circled on a lot of people's calendars. It is the first day NFL teams can begin applying the franchise tag to free agents, otherwise known as Dak Prescott Day. Pretty much the conversation that we've been having for 2 years and more. He was tagged last year. He may play under the tag again at a cost this year of $37.7 million. And joining us here is our Dak Prescott insider, basically, as I know him at this point, the one and only Ed Werder. Ed, where do I begin? What is the latest at this point on Dak and Dallas?
You know, Greeny, as you know, this has been the most impossible negotiation for Jerry Jones in his 33 years as Cowboys owner. Unable to achieve a successful outcome last season, the Cowboys paid Dak Prescott a team record $31.4 million to play just 5 games on the franchise tag before his season-ending injury. And now, unless they reach a multi-year agreement that's been so elusive, they have to decide whether to commit $37.7 million without knowing if he's fully recovered from the injuries, just to see him play another season in a Cowboys uniform, accepting all the while it could be his last in Dallas, as he's a mere 16 games from unrestricted free agency. If the Cowboys follow the course they took last year, they won't franchise tag Prescott until the March 9th deadline. Then it was 3 months, Greeny, before he signed the tag and guaranteed his 1-year salary as the worst possible outcome. But all that really assumes a lot, because there are significantly different factors at play this time. Issues seeming to make it so much harder to do the deal. The salary cap expected to decline by as much as $18 million per team. The cost of the franchise tag for Prescott's $7 million higher. He's coming off the first major injury of his career. Any one of these factors could change the approach of one or both sides. And then there's this. There's always a certain level of unpredictability with Jerry Jones, and it's probably exaggerated by the fact the media covering the team has had no access to him, so his thoughts as the season has unraveled. The post-game interviews where Jerry takes questions just as soon as he departs the locker room didn't take place even once during the pandemic, so we don't really have a sense of what Jerry's thinking is on this and other major off-season decisions. And of course, Greeny, Dak hasn't spoken since the season ended.
No, but Dak has just sat back and watched his leverage grow, and Jerry, I guess, to some degree, has seen the opposite. So, Ed, what are the other options? I mean, we're going to talk about this with Mike Tannenbaum in a moment. Is the idea, if they recognize that franchise tagging him this year is such an unappealing option because of the finances and because he'd be 12 months away from walking away as a free agent, are there any other options for the Cowboys if they don't get a long-term deal done?
Well, I think it would be negligence on the part of Jerry Jones and the Cowboys front office if on March 9th they don't have a sense that they're going to be able to get this deal done long-term with Dak Prescott. Even if they franchise tag him, I think they have to consider drafting a quarterback with the 10th overall pick. That's the highest pick they've had since 2016. With quarterbacks available in this draft and continuing uncertainty about Dak Prescott's long-term commitment, I think they would have to consider drafting a quarterback, even though that's not the way Jerry Jones has operated. I mean, he's only done that once, and that was the first year. 1989, drafted Troy Aikman, #1 overall. It's not a philosophy that he's generally embraced, but it did produce 3 Super Bowl wins, the only ones that have taken place in Dallas since Jerry's owned the team.
That's outstanding. Ed Werder, thank you. We will be leaning on you through this process. We'll come back to you for sure. Thank you. Let me bring the crew back in here. That's an interesting one. And Mike Tannenbaum, let me start with you, because you brought up earlier the idea that if the Cowboys can't get a deal done, they have to consider trading Dak, a sign and trade, which is a possibility. That's what I thought Ed was about to say. I did not expect him to say they have to consider taking a quarterback at number 10. As a GM, what do you think of that idea, Mike T?
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, and I think Ed used the right word, which is Dallas has been negligent to be in this position, and now they have to explore all options, because if they don't get a deal done by March 9th, this is really important, Greeny. It is a massive, massive difference from a year ago. A year ago, they put their feet up on the desk and say, hey, no problem, we got him for another year. Now he's 12 months from walking out the door and getting virtually nothing. So a sign and trade has to be in the mix. Drafting a quarterback 10th overall, as Ed's saying, has to be in the mix. And I would exhaust every reasonable opportunity to get a long-term deal done. But if I can't, by March 9th, I got to consider the alternative, because the worst thing that could happen if I'm the Dallas Cowboys is he plays on a one-year deal and then goodbye. And now you're starting from scratch in 2022 with no quarterback and no plan. So you have to fix it right now.
Jeff Darlington, it looked to me like you were shaking your head. Why was that?
Because I lost my IFB, but I also would shake my head about the fact that Dak Prescott is not signed to a long-term deal. And by the way, the thing that we keep having to remind ourselves here is last year the issue was the years of the contract. 4 years is what Dak wanted. The Cowboys wanted to get him under a 5-year deal. So what happens this year? Is Dak going to say, I want a 3-year deal? And to Mike's point, if you do then tag and trade him, is an organization on the outside going to say, yeah, we'll just give Dak whatever he wants after giving up a couple of first-round picks? So for the Dallas Cowboys, once again, they have pinned themselves into a corner as each day has passed, to the point where it feels to me like it's going to be very difficult to bridge the gap that has widened since 2 years ago.
So, Lewis, help me here. I mean, it seems to me, I didn't think this could possibly get worse until the idea that they might draft a quarterback at number 10 to hedge against this possibility for a team that needs everything. That all of a sudden it got even worse. So how did they get themselves into this position, Lewis? And more importantly, how do they get themselves out?
Again, they got themselves into this position because for some reason in the contract negotiating process, they didn't feel as though giving Dak the years that he wanted on the contract really fit into their long-term plans and was in their best interest. And it was a sticking point. It doesn't sound to me, based on the reporting that all of our great reporters have done, that the average per year was the issue. It was the length of the deal was the issue. And you sit there and you think, now, what is Jerry thinking now about this? Was it really worth that at this point in time now, given the position that they are in? Because they put themselves in this position because they didn't want to move off of those years, it sounds like. How do they get themselves out of it? That's a great question. Look, I think Ed brings up a great point. I think, the draft now has to come into play. It's hard to fathom. Mm-hmm. It's hard to fathom Dak Prescott not in a Dallas Cowboy uniform. It really does, especially considering the fact that, look, we keep talking about all these off-the-field type of machinations, but really, when you look about on the football field, this guy is deserving of getting the contract that he wants and the years that he wants relative to his importance on this football team. I mean, I would have been willing to concede that to him, given what he means to this football team. And the fact that they haven't done it now, as Mike has alluded to, now you're less than a year away from him walking in free agency. And the
final outcome of this is that you don't wind up keeping the player for the long term. There's no other way to read this, Mike T, because Jerry Jones is a very smart man who's been in a trillion negotiations. The only reasonable expectation here we can have, Mike Tannenbaum, is that Jerry Jones is willing to live with Dak Prescott not being the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
I don't think that's it. I mean, and that's what's so fascinating. I think this is a man for 30-plus years has gotten everything he's wanted within reason. And I think he's sitting there saying, like, I'll figure this out when I'm ready to on my terms. And, Greeny, I think you're bringing up a really interesting point. I don't think he's processed that they're going to probably lose this player within a year, and there's going to be absolute capitulation between now and March 9th by the Cowboys, by Jerry Jones, to get this deal done.
Well, they better be, because otherwise this is a mess of their own making, and they've got 2 weeks to try and clean it up. All right, we'll take a short break. We're just getting started. Coming up, Aaron Rodgers is about to lose one of his most important offensive weapons, or at least it appears they may. A big decision coming in Green Bay. And then LeBron unloads on load management. Does the King need more time on the bench? We'll answer that question and more as we get up with you on ESPN.